So Devan wrote this book and many great plays that I love. So tell me about how you transitioned from playwriting to journalism to writing this book, The Wedding Bee. Do you have another novel coming out?
I'm working on a second novel right now. Yeah.
Very cool.
It was basically what you can probably identify with is doing the day gig as a playwright.
Yeah.
Really started getting to me. So I decided I didn't want to live a bifurcated life anymore.
Sure.
I wanted to write, and I quit my day job because I had done like everything. I had been an information technology consultant. I had been a producer of an entertainment news show. I had been a presidential campaign coordinator.
Oh, really?
I was a theater reviewer. I was a book editor. I was a copywriter.
Wow.
Covered the waterfront. And
those all sound like hard jobs to get, actually.
You know, some of them were more than others. A lot of word processing early on, and bookkeeping. And I just decided to quit my job, which at the time was as a copy editor, and say I'm going to find a way to make a living as a writer or die. So, and I got lucky. About 6 months later, I got a job writing for the Times, which was a job.
The New York Times.
The New York Times. But I had actually applied for a job there about a year prior, a completely different job, and I never heard from them, and didn't really think again about it. And then my resume got thrown from one desk to the next, and I ended up being offered this job to write for the style section about weddings. And weirdly enough, I started I had done some journalism, but not a lot. So I started doing a lot of research about journalism, and there were books that said some of the best training for a journalist is theater training and being a playwright. So I thought, great. And I'm probably the first writer at the Times to write my pieces like a playwright. I viewed it as dialogue. And then what I would do when I wrote a piece, I would take everything from all the interviews, and I would do major interviews. I do 3 interviews with the bride, 3 interviews with the groom. Each interview is about an hour and a half, 2 hours long. Then I do follow-up interviews with all the friends and relatives, and it's hours and hours and hours. And then I'd lay it all out, and I would map out what I thought were the best quotes. And then I'd make a list of all the best quotes. And then I would put them into an order, sort of like a one-act play. But as someone who wrote everything from a dialogue perspective, and it took a long time at the Times for me to be comfortable with all the stuff that comes between the quotes.
Yes.
and people would always say, oh, you get great quotes. Like my editor from my very first piece, you pick great quotes. And it was like, well, of course, it's dialogue. So I never even took it much as a compliment, because I thought, if as a playwright I don't come up with good quotes, then what am I doing? So I left the Times and I started writing a book, but what was scary is all that stuff between the quotes in a book filled books are. And that was challenging. But the other place where the Times helped me, and I would recommend all playwrights or writers work in a newspaper, because deadlines.
Sure. I
had to every week hand stuff in. And my process of writing, I mean, I don't know what it's like for you, but for me, it's pain and suffering. I wrote it out completely in play structure, or more specifically, screenplay structure.
Like a 3-act structure?
3-act structure, attack, crisis, climax, act breaks, 3-act breaks with turnarounds. And in fact, one of the great things that came about was, even before I sold the book, I got a CAA agent out of the deal, and who immediately got excited about what he recognized as being a very screenplay-friendly structure. But obviously it's a little longer than a screenplay. That was just frightening.
Does that mean there's more beats, or does that mean that the beats last longer?
You know, that's an interesting question. It's just longer, but I guess the beats do last longer, so for sure. I mean, everything's much longer.
Oh, everything's so quick in a screenplay. You have to whittle it down to
exactly. But there are probably also more beats, because I did notice each of my acts also has something that screenplays have in theory, but it's really strong in the book. There's definitely an act. Each act has a midpoint break that's also really strong, because there's just so many pages. An act can be 100 pages.
No.
which, you know, a screenplay can be, you know, less than 100 pages.
Yeah.
So, and that was also intimidating, the idea to fill up that many pages.
Yeah.
So I did at the times, the way I would work each week is I was convinced each week I'm never going to finish this article. It was a stupid assignment. I never should have accepted it. I never should have said this was a good idea. I never should. And if it was a good idea, it's not an idea I can do. And this is my process. I have to think of all the reasons why it's terrible. I'm terrible. I can't do this. I don't want to do it. I should like do something else. And that was followed by a lot of eating. But I built that into my schedule. I basically I schedule procrastination. I schedule, it's like, I look at it like it's 3 days to write the piece. The first day is thinking of all the reasons I don't want to write the piece, followed by a day of writing it, and then a day of rewriting it. And that would really be my schedule. But I treat it the same way as an article, in that each chapter was my assignment for the week. I kind of polish as I go. So like as I'm putting sentences down, it's like I'm really not committing to the page until what's usually what most people consider a second or third draft, which is a really unhelpful way of going about things, because you want to free your spirit and free your mind and let your impulses take you where they want to take you. And I tend to, the editor in me gets in the way in that sense. Sometimes it's a good thing.
So how long did it take you to get to the first, before you figured out where the second act goes?
See, it was all in process, but I finished the whole book. I wrote the book in a year, over a year and a half. Because in between I did stop and work full-time a bit. And when I started, I was still working full-time, but it was going very slow, and I felt if I want to write this in a year, which is what I wanted, I just didn't see that happening if I continued to work. And in some ways, financially, it'd be better to earn money, more money, and I had enough savings where I felt long-term it was to my advantage to just get it done and get it out there, because then at least whatever I'm going to accomplish or not accomplish will start happening. And romantic comedies are really, weirdly in fiction, they're considered exclusively a female territory, which is odd, because in plays, as a playwright, in plays and screenplays, in movies, you would never think twice about a male hero in a romantic comedy. I think the times in my life when things I've been less happy with where things are the times where I got too comfortable, where I had a pretty good gig, I'm earning pretty good money, and I'm not necessarily doing something I'm passionate about. And it's hard to get on the high wire. It's, you know, I have a friend who, someone you know actually, who has said I tend to land on my feet really well. And
about you?
Yes. And it's true. But when you do it a lot, and you start getting older, you know, it's hard on the knees. and yet, to not do it, to not jump, to not take chances, you know, what is that? Even if something like someone telling you, you know, a romantic comedy can't be about a guy, I mean, whatever it is, to say, well, I believe in it. The thing I did learn from couples the most, from all the work I did on the weddings, is that happiness is a choice. That's what I came away from. And it's actually the theme of the book. There's actually a line in the book where he says he's choosing to be happy. Happiness is a choice, and he's choosing to be happy. And that's what comes back to following your passion, shaking things up, doing in life what makes you happy. And in many ways, I mean, I'm hoping to, you know, fall in love any day now. But I think it's a lot like writing a book.
Falling in love is like writing
I think it is. I think writing a play or writing anything, there's a spark. And all you get is that spark. And it's what you do with it.